Abortion. Abortion is never an easy subject to talk about. It's deeply sensitive, deeply emotional, and touches people in profoundly different ways. What follows is not a judgment on anyone. These are simply three real stories, one from my own family and two from others known to me, each with very different outcomes and different circumstances. In the 1950s, abortion in the UK was illegal, except in cases where a doctor believed the mother's life was at risk. It was a time when unmarried mothers were shamed, judged, and often had their babies taken from them and placed in orphanages, adopted, never to see them again. And sometimes with the support of churches, to their great shame. My mother conceived in early 1951 after a one-night relationship with another man while she was engaged to Peter. Naturally, she didn't want to tell him about the other man. Who would? She herself was unsure who the father was. Peter assumed he was, and did what society expected and married her. Good on him. When I was born, it was clear I bore no resemblance to Peter. His family dismissed this, but with suspicion, suggesting I simply favoured my mother's side. A year later, my sister was born. It was a traumatic birth and my mother nearly died. Doctors warned her not to have any more children. But the following year, she fell pregnant again. This time the doctors insisted that continuing the pregnancy would almost certainly kill her. The baby was aborted, and my mother was told she would never be able to conceive again. As I grew, my lack of resemblance to Peter became more obvious. Tensions rose until, during a violent argument, my mother told him I was not his son. That was when I was about 5. Divorce was also unthinkable in those days, and Peter felt trapped. A marriage he didn't want, a child who was not his, a daughter he had no love for, as it seems he had issues himself from childhood mistreatment from his own mother, which caused him to have a profound dislike for girls, and no hope of ever having a son of his own. About 10 years later, though, after heavy drinking, Peter forced himself on my mother. And despite the doctor's certainty that she could never conceive again, she actually became pregnant. My mother chose to go ahead with the pregnancy, believing that if her death occurred and my sister and I were placed in an orphanage or adopted, it might be a better outcome than another termination and life as it had been with Peter. By what I can only consider and describe as the grace of God, my brother was born safely and my mother survived. And from the moment he arrived, Peter adored him. My sister and I loved him too, though Peter's attitude towards us never changed. I was told none of this until I was 27, and I grew up believing Peter was my father, and in many ways he tried to rise to that role with the limited emotional resources he had. But I could never reconcile the moments when he looked at me with disgust, nor the violence he directed at my mother, especially after drinking. And he continued to treat my sister pretty badly as well. Now, where this story sits in the wider abortion debate, I'm not entirely sure. It could be interpreted in different ways depending on one's perspective. But certainly, my mother's abortion had a profound effect on our early and ongoing family life. The second story is of a young woman who came to me for some guiding prayer. I'll call her Jean for anonymity. Her parents were divorced. Her father, from overseas, a wealthy businessman, had not remarried, but her mother had. And both she and her new husband were Christians. After a heavy night out, Jean, plied with drink, had a one-night encounter and became pregnant. She told her mother and stepfather, who stood by her. But her biological father came from a cultural and religious background where unmarried mothers face severe shame, disgrace on the family, and even honour killings do take place. He demanded she get a termination, threatening to disinherit and disown her. Jean, who had become a Christian herself, held firm. She chose to continue the pregnancy and gave birth to a healthy daughter. The child's father wanted nothing to do with either of them, and Jean's father initially kept his distance. But surprisingly, he did relent, and he didn't disown her. And over the next 20 years, he became deeply supportive, developing a great love for both his daughter and granddaughter. He even attended the Christian dedication and baptism of his granddaughter, despite the stigma this caused him within his own faith community. The third short story is of a divorced woman raising 2 children on her own. After a one-night relationship, she also became pregnant and chose to have a termination. The decision left her with deep regret and shame. Sometime later, she became a Christian, and during a time of prayer one day, she had a vision of her unborn child, not as a vague presence, but as a fully formed human being, alive and safe in the presence of God. This didn't make her feel that it had been okay to have the abortion, but settled her mind that God had redeemed the situation by his grace and his mercy and his love for the sake of the unborn child. Now, your experiences and beliefs may be very different to mine. Personally, I hold a firm belief in the sanctity of life from the moment of conception. But I also believe in compassion, in mercy, and in the love and grace of God, who meets people in their deepest pain. And if any part of these stories resonates with your own, whether through regret, fear, courage, or hope, I pray you find comfort, and I encourage you to look to the Creator God of us all for guidance, healing, and